to the DataStack Show Shop Talk, where Kostas and I talk shop. Kostas, it's been a while since we've done one of these. Lots has happened. I have a new baby in my household, so that's kept me away from the microphone for a little bit. But this is exciting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I miss freestyling with you, so let's do it again.
Okay, this was the question on my mind, which is a broad topic and kind of sounds cliche. We actually haven't talked a lot about AI in terms of like the latest hype, right? I mean, we've talked a lot about ML ops, and we've talked to some extent about, sort of AI applications at scale with several guests, but those tend to be more technical conversations around why ML is difficult, right? We've touched on the ethical, which is interesting, but LLMs are, it seemed like overnight they went from being something that was kind of cool to something that, there are all these blog posts about, there's petitions being signed by Elon Musk. Sam Altman's talking to Joe Rogan. Andreessen Horowitz is saying, this is going to save the world. Other people are saying it's going to burn the world down. How are you thinking about this? I've actually been wanting to, I almost texted you this the other day, but I was like, we need to talk on the phone. How are you thinking about it?
Yeah. How I'm thinking about it. How I think or how I feel. It's like kind of like two different things, not necessarily like aligned.
That's probably how a lot of people, actually, that's probably a pretty articulate way to explain a lot of people, like, how do I think about this? How do I feel about this? Maybe disparate.
Yeah. I think, like, first of all, the problem with like what is happening right now, like with AI, is that I think there is like a kind of like hype fatigue to the people out there, especially like after like the crypto craziness, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we had like this so revolutionary thing coming that is going like to change everything. Like democracies are going to change, banks are going to change, everyone's going to be multi-billionaire, like whatever. And suddenly like everything collapses, right?
Yeah.
And instead of that, we just have many people going to the court, right? So I think like people, and it's interesting because, you have like this experience, and immediately, like as you still like experience that, you get into like an extreme hype that comes with AI. And then you're like, is this different? Is it the same? Because you can hear that, right? Like there are like people saying, oh, it's the same thing. Like it's at the end, like people are like overselling this thing, and at the end it's going to be okay, like same thing like as crypto, right? Like what is the use case at the end? Like what are we going to do? Now, if you want my opinion, like I don't think it's the same thing. It's quite different. I don't know. I'm not sure that like we have figured out yet, like what's exactly, let's say, the source of the value is going to be and how it's going to be delivered. But at the same time, I think that like the hype also hurts the whole
I agree.
thing. Like it's almost like, I don't know, like I feel like almost I want to advise people to just quit Twitter. Like don't listen to the people there. Like it's like, no, don't do that to yourself.
Yeah.
Now there are like things that are changing with these technologies that I don't think we hear that much about them, because probably they are like coming from, like industries that are a little bit boring to most people. Anything that has to do, like I was talking with people that they're doing some like amazing stuff, like in insurtech, for example, and there's like a lot of value. Now, is this value like going to, make like humans obsolete? No, 100% no. Like it's just, it's going to be, let's say, different and like in some ways like much more efficient, and to be honest, like much more pleasurable to do your work, right?
Yeah.
Like because they're like so many, like mundane tasks that's like okay, like you don't like doing. Like
Yeah.
it's, you know. So there's a lot of hype. I think it's hard to separate signal from noise.
Yeah.
I think we are going to see new business models coming out of that stuff, which is probably something like I'm very curious to see how this is going to emerge. And I'm waiting like for the hype to go away,
Yeah.
so I can keep like start working. And by the way, like I'll give you an example, right? Like, do you hear like anyone talking about um, self-driving cars anymore?
No, that I was actually going to bring. I'm so glad you brought this up. That faces similar
Yeah.
hype cycle, and there are actually some signals that made a lot of people say, "Oh, well, this whole thing is over," right? Like GM shut down, their
Well,
self-driving car
yeah.
program or whatever, right? But there's still companies like Waymo's doing incredible stuff, like
Dude, like okay, I mean, in San Francisco, like if you go out for a walk, like you are going to see Waymos and Cruise like driving on their own like all the time.
yeah.
Like I had like my father like visiting from Greece and like he saw like a car without like a driver and he was like, what the fuck is this? Like, well, yeah, like like we take it for granted, but like it's like it's not the reality like for the 99.9% of the population out there. And the
Yeah.
reason I'm saying that is because progress is made, but progress at let's say the real progress happens much slower than what like the hype
Yes.
cycle is, right?
Yep.
So yeah, of course, like self-driving cars are out there, but it's not like one day to the next will substitute everything with like self-driving cars. Like they need
Yeah.
to make sure that like they can drive without accidents, and they will slowly roll them out and like see how they do. And at the beginning it's going to be like in more quiet times, and then it's going to
Yep.
be like peak times, like all these things. So it's happening, but like that's the thing, like that's like I think like part of like human nature, like we get like super excited like at the beginning, and then like it's like okay, boring, like it's just a car without a driver.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, sure. Like,
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's yeah, I think it's really unfortunate that the timing relative to the crypto hype cycle and that baggage just sort of being attached in a lot of people's minds, I would think,
yeah,
to AI and LLMs. Because I agree with you, they are fundamentally different. Like there's fundamental differences.
yeah, and like I think like the crypto story is like really bad because like okay, there are many how to say that, like bubbles or like ugly
Yeah.
stories in tech, right? I mean, but it's one thing when like institutional investors lose their money. It's another thing when grandmothers and grandfathers lose their money,
Yeah.
and that can hurt a lot. Let's say the faith that like the broader society has towards like technology.
Yep.
Like we make fun of like the WeWork like situation, for example, but at the end, like okay, like who cared about WeWork, right? Like is it like your I don't know, like your dad or your uncle like no or care about like what happened there? But probably if you talk to them about crypto, like they're aware of that. Like they know stories of like people who got hurt by that because they lost their money, right?
Yep.
But losing the money is one thing. The long term, like let's say negative effect of that is people like losing faith like in progress and tech, right?
Yep.
But again, as you said, like AI is different, but it's also like early. So we need like to figure out what that means, and
Yep.
how we can use it and how we can make it like part of our everyday life.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, this is the drastic oversimplification, but if you think about broad impact of these technologies at a baseline level, crypto for the average person sort of encouraged some level of speculation, right? I mean, that was sort of the entry point into interacting with cryptocurrency, right? And that's really sad to me, because the idea around some of the things that blockchain and finance could do is really interesting from a transparency standpoint and digital currencies and stuff, but it centered so heavily on speculation. I mean, and not everyone would have said it that way, but like that was sort
Yeah.
of the initial experience. Whereas with AI and LLMs, what's really fascinating is that even on a very micro level, it's seen as a utility, right? Like I can ask, I mean, this is such a small thing, but I was like, man, I'm working on I'm stubbing out like a fake data set and I need 25 like randomly generated alphanumeric keys. It's like, okay, it, took 2 seconds. A chat GPT, right? Where it's like, oh, like, okay, I need to figure out the Google Sheets formula or, rand number, and I forgot the formula, all that sort of stuff. And that's a very small example, but there's sort of immediate utility on even a micro scale with LLMs, which is really interesting. And so to me, there's just a huge amount of interesting potential. And I'm with you. I can't wait to see after the first round of companies fail that are building really thin layers on it, that people will figure out how to do themselves. After all those fail, and then, people start building new business models, it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, 100%. Like, okay, like I mean, what is like fundamentally different? It's like, I think you put it like very well. With AI and ML, you have something that it's just like lowering like the entry tremendously to anything that has to do with interacting like with technology, right?
Yeah.
I think that was like probably like the promise also of like crypto, but at the end, like what it was like insane to me with crypto was that, okay, you get something like you get like an instrument of value creation that on its own is like extremely complicated, which is investment in financial instruments. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Like
like,
like, I don't understand that stuff. Like I don't know. And like, okay, I'm like, I mean, I have like a brain that like can think, right? And you mix it with something which is cryptography, which by the way, like I did study it like as part of my degree. And like, dude, like I don't understand what they are talking about. Like I don't. Like it's like, and they come to you, okay, and they're like, okay, let me give you my prospectus like to decide like to invest in what I'm building. And they are laying down like in an algorithm that usually goes like through like peer reviewing from like crypto experts, like to figure out if this thing like is worth or not, right?
yeah.
And so you take like a complicated thing, put more complicated thing in it, and you give it like to everyone. And okay, give it, but don't attach it like to their wallet, you know?
Well, what's really weird about that is that there was a huge meme emphasis in crypto, right? Like Dogecoin and all of these derivative coins that got created that were essentially like derived from online memes. And I mean, as crazy as it sounds, like there are people who made a lot of money when like Elon Musk tweeted about Dogecoin because it moved up like some minuscule, amount, but percentage wise was huge, right? And it was just, I mean, it that obfuscated the complexity and seriousness of this being tied to your actual bank account in a way that I think was really unhealthy. And I mean, you're right. A ton of people lost a lot of money.
Well, that's the thing. What happened with crypto is that crypto was like a zero-sum game. Yeah, people made money because some other people lost money. Simple as that. Like there's no, but like technology, right? Like it's fundamentally a zero, sorry, a positive sum game.
Yeah.
Like, or at least it should be, right? Like it should be something that there's more value generated than what is like put into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's why I don't know, me at least, I'm like so excited about like technology and why like I really like working with that and like building stuff with that.
Although I will say, if you start Mumford coin, I will invest heavily in Mumford coin.
That's, yeah, I don't know. I think it's too late. Like maybe we need something with Mumford and the AI. I don't know. Like I have to think about it. But anyway, enough with crypto. Let's go back to AI and ML.
I have a question for you on AI/ML. I was going there myself. Okay. Let's talk about some of the fears around it. And I'm going to draw a comparison for you that I've been thinking about recently. So there is a big thread of conversation out there around AI and LLMs around, okay, no one's going to be able to know what's real. How do I sort through like the information? You know, it can generate, you know, all this sort of stuff. And we can talk about the specifics there, but the comparison I wanted to draw was that actually, I feel like Google, or really just like online search in general, to me, warranted some of the same types of concern. Not that, you know, not that the search engine wasn't trying to mitigate things that were obviously fake, right? Like, but there's so much crap out there on the internet that you can find just by searching, right? I mean, how do you discern what's real? And of course, the machine is doing some of that for you. Like the search engine algorithm's doing some of that for you, but it's like, well, that's literally like the LLM is doing some of that for you, right? I mean, in some ways, there's this huge negative reaction. It's like, well, it's not like this is a new problem. We're experiencing it in a new way. And in fact, ironically, like, it's not like it's, yeah, it's not like we haven't faced this in a new way. And in fact, a lot of the ways that this stuff is being generated, it's trained on all of the information that's out there, right? Some proportion of which, you know, isn't good information. So what's your take from that standpoint? To me, I'm not saying we shouldn't think wisely about how we use technology, but this is not, to me, a new problem that we've faced. It's actually a problem that we've faced for a while.
Yeah. I'll tell you my opinion, okay? And okay, I'll get like a little bit like philosophical at the beginning, but I think it's important, like for what like I'm going to say about like AI and like the things that you talked about. Okay, reality. You use like the word like real. What is real out there, right? And like what I can trust and how I can figure out what is like real and what is not real. Now, the truth is that like reality is a construct at the end. Okay, like at a great, like big part of what we are experiencing every day, okay, it's narrated to us. Okay, and that's not like anything that I'm not trying to say anything. There's no conspiracy in what I'm saying. Like it's just how like humans work, like our brains work, right? And like how we relate with like the environment around us. Now, although there is a very, very, very important thing here, and that's like the concept of accountability. Okay, when I interact with you, Eric, like, okay, I mean, you say something to me and I trust you, right? That you say like something that it's honest. Well, it might be a lie, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I find out at some day that like this whole relationship we had, the two of us, was like a big lie, right? But I know who is accountable for that. It's you.
Yeah.
It's like a good, right? The same thing applies also like with Google, right? Like, yeah, but there's like a legal system. There is like a framework. There are like committees that they look at them like and try like to regulate them, blah blah blah, like all that stuff, right? And of course, like we get used also to trust them. The problem with AI is that today we need like to trust something that doesn't have a very clear agency in our system, right? It's not an
Yeah.
organization that is legally governed by a specific framework. And we have seen it working and failing and working and failing, and we know how to deal with it when it fails and when it works, right? It's not a human that we know how to deal with a human when like this happens, right? It's, I don't know, it's a bunch of like weights and connections that comes up like with an output, and okay, who is accountable for that?
Yeah.
Let's say I go to a model and ask it for I don't know, like to cure my cancer, right? And it says something, and I decide that like I'm going to follow that and not the doctor, right? What's happening there? Like what's okay? That's an extreme example, which of course I'm accountable for my stupidity, but like it's very different because like the interaction is very different, right?
Yeah.
So I think like that's like the problem that we are going through right now, that we have like a new type of like agent in the system that we are living in, and we need to figure out how to regulate it and how to interact with it, how to deal with failure when we interact with it.
All right, we'll try it. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us for another shop talk. Kostas, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts, even if they're, just a construct. And we will catch you on the next one.